Joe, man, thanks for being on the podcast.
Yep.
You were one of the first people to be on this podcast originally when Sean Kelly was hosting it.
That was a long time ago now.
5 years?
It's been that long.
Time flies when you're having fun.
A lot has changed.
We had a pandemic in between that.
Yeah, minor detail.
How's things going with you guys here at Tangram?
You know, during the middle of, because of our business, you know, I questioned a lot whether or not the viability of my industry. There was times when I was sitting alone in my home study trying to run the business and wondering to myself, what is the future of our industry? And is there going to be a future of our industry? Is everybody going to work from their home the rest of their lives?
Yeah, which was definitely like people were thinking offices were just dead.
For sure.
Forever.
For sure. Yeah.
Like that was definitely, you know, if you just read headlines, you would think your industry and my industry, but specifically yours with office environments, office furniture, like maybe I'm just going to be selling people home office furniture.
People would ask me that question and I would be like, I certainly hope not, because there's not a viable business there for me.
Yeah.
So, but ironically, 2022 was our record sales year.
Wow.
Because everybody realized that they can't get people to come back to the old office. They have to offer them something better to return to. So as a result of that, offices are getting smaller, but they're changing completely, because if you're going to have a hybrid office, you can't have hard-walled high cubicles and people without collaboration spaces. So the offices are being renovated. So the good news for our business is that there's still lots of opportunity out there and people changing the offices.
Yeah. Are you seeing a lot more of the types of space that we're in right now? And for the audience, we're at Joe Tangram's HQ in Santa Fe Springs. This building's 240,000 square feet, 220,000 square feet.
220.
I want to say 20,000 square feet of office.
No, 40.
40,000 square feet of office, and then the rest, so 180,000 square feet of warehouse. That's industrial. Mm-hmm. You guys designed this office space, this 40,000 square feet.
Right.
Which is gorgeous. This space has won awards, which we definitely need to talk about. But we're in one of these rooms. What would you call this room that we're in right now? Like a breakout lounge room?
Well, we actually... It's a conference room, believe it or not. It's just not a traditional conference room. The traditional conference room is changing completely. The big the big long table with this one screen at the end is not where the office conference room is going. So this is a collaborative area with, you know, stadium seating on one side and lounge seating down below, and an interactive board to that the audience can't see but behind the camera.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. This feels to me, you're totally right, that like if I was to pick a conference room to host a meeting, I would want to be in this room. This is much more collaborative and doesn't feel as like corporate as the typical like giant 12 or 24 seat office with like the round table and everyone's around the table in chairs. This is much more like friendly, warm, welcoming.
It's more like your family room at home.
Yeah.
That's the intent.
Yeah. Wow. I didn't even think about this I think of this as a collaboration room, but like, yeah, you're right. This is another conference room. It's a collaboration room, but it's also a conference room.
I mean, if you think about how you sit around your home, what do? You lounge, you put your feet up, you bring your iPad. You might have the TV on in one corner and somebody else in the kitchen cooking, but it's a collaboration area in an office that's much more like your home.
Yeah. So office, in your opinion, or what Tangram's seeing, who's truly the thought leader when it comes to office design, I mean, give the audience a little bit background on Tangram. Like, you guys are truly when it comes to Southern California dealerships, you are the biggest. Massive success in what you've been able to establish here at the company. Like, tell the audience a little bit about Tangram.
Well, we're not a design firm.
Yeah.
We have about 60 interior designers on staff, but we work with the architecture and design community to collaborate to create these great spaces. So we're a subspecialty of the design business. So Tangram was formed in 1963. Hopefully, I don't look like the founder.
Well, I mean, I definitely want to go through the story of Tangram, but you bought this company
21 years ago.
20, I was gonna say 20 years ago, but yeah,
Yeah.
21 years ago.
Yeah, so it had been through some financial duress, was deeply in debt, and I took it over in 2002, and it had lost significant amount of money for the previous 5 years, so it was in a real bad financial place. So whenever a company's in a bad financial position, that means the business and the people in the business are in a bad place. And so, the first thing I had to do was establish, that this is a new business, right? And gain people's confidence back. And that takes time. But, we turned the business around quickly. We started making money right away. And, then it was all about gaining trust and momentum of internally before you can start gaining trust and momentum externally. So
Mm.
I focused very much on the internal part of the business first. When I arrived, I moved here from Michigan. I literally knew one person in the state of California, and that was, I didn't know which freeway was what just to get to the office. So over that period of first couple of years is when we reestablished the business and started making it a holistic work environment internally, and then obviously rebranding ourselves externally, even though we didn't change the name of the company. But we had to change our reputation because the company was uh, in duress.
What did you when you took the company over 21 years ago, and you said you focused on building a reputation internally? What were you focused on?
Well, when a company loses money 5 years in a row, the employees people get laid off. They don't get raises. They don't trust the leadership. I was all about making sure the leadership or the staff of the company trusted us going forward. So I said, companies only go in two directions. They go up or they go down. They never stay the same. And so I tried to tell them, we had to grow the business in order to make it more successful. But we had to be fiscally responsible at the same time. And so those are the things we focused on. And then I spent a tremendous amount of my time not only internally making good relationships with the staff, but externally in the field because the reputation of the company was damaged at the time as well. So I jokingly used to say I was on my apology tour for 2 years. I'm sorry we screwed that up. I'm sorry we didn't do a good job. Please give me another chance.
That's so good. That is funny. So you went on an apology tour for a few years. Were able to gain the trust of your employees here by
Right,
being fiscally responsible, like you said, but also increasing revenue. So the company was starting to be more successful.
right.
So you're able to give raises, establish that trust, and then you're going through an apology tour
Yeah.
and trying to gain the trust of the external world or the external business.
Yeah, so, our sales went up every single year. Then we hit a recession in 2008, which, I'm old enough now that I've been through four recessions.
Wow.
And so I know how to navigate my way through them and keep the company whole. And, I'm really proud of the fact that when we've been through recessions, I've never laid anybody off.
You've never laid anyone
No,
off.
not as a result. I mean, we've let people go, but those are
Yeah.
performance based, but never as a result of we're just going to let people go because there's a recession. I know I'm particularly sensitive to that issue because when you lay somebody off in a recession, you're sending them to the unemployment line because the likelihood of them finding another job during a recession is slim.
Mm.
So we try really hard to keep people employed. And so as a result, that all comes from planning years in advance so you have a strong balance sheet so you can absorb, lower profits and run the business much leaner than you might normally do those sort of times.
What was, in your opinion, out of the four, call it downturns, recessions you've been through, which one was the hardest one to get through?
Well, the dot-com one was the worst one, and that predated when I lived in Michigan. I owned a similar business in Michigan when I moved here from Michigan in 2002. That was much more difficult. Um,
More difficult than COVID?
Well, COVID was was different because we didn't know what the future was going to hold. When you go through a recession, you know it's an economic window of time that if you're prepared for it and you keep your arms around your customers, your client, your employees, and your balance sheet, you're going to make it through. But COVID was different because COVID was, are we in a viable business? And it's still reverberating through the economy. I mean, people haven't worked out how many days I'm going to be in the office, what kind of office do I need, you know, who's coming into the office, do we want to have an office still, and if we do, what does it look like? So COVID was uniquely different. It was but again, during COVID, we didn't lay people off. You know, we kept the company and everybody whole. As a result, the leadership team took a financial hit, and I took a financial hit, but that's part of the job.
Yeah, you during COVID, you didn't pay yourself.
No, I didn't pay myself.
Unbelievable. I mean, talking about establishing trust with your employees, you basically putting them ahead of yourself.
Well, in the big picture, what I pay myself as a salary wouldn't have made or broken the organization.
Mm.
It was more symbolic than anything because I wanted to make sure people understood that I understand what they're going through, and if anybody's going to sacrifice, I'll sacrifice myself first.
Yeah.
And it was funny because when it happened, I was sitting at my kitchen table, and my wife was like 10 feet away from me doing something at the sink. And I told my CFO, okay, stop paying me. I'm not going to take a salary until we're through COVID. And I'll never forget the look from my wife. She's like,
Are you sure, honey?
are you sure this is what we want to do? But, when you're able to stand in front of everybody and say, I've stopped paying myself until I can restore your pay. Because we asked people to take a furlough, some voluntarily, some we had to give them, a pay reduction. But we wanted to keep everybody employed.
Yeah. That is incredible because I remember a lot of people getting PPE loans,
Right.
Paying themselves and basically firing a lot of their employees.
Right.
And to hear that you took a different approach where you kept everyone on, you tried to pay people as much as you could, and then you didn't receive any of that money. You didn't pay yourself for that year, however long it was.
Yeah.
It's really rare, Joe.
Well, that's how you gain loyalty with people, and that's how you people gain trust.
Yeah.
And that's the most important thing for a leader to have, is because you're always going to be making tough decisions, and if people trust that you have their interests at heart, then they know you'll make good decisions.
Yeah. So, where did that come from? Like, where did you learn that quality? Like, walk me through kind of the development of Joe Lozowski and how we got here, where he's choosing not to pay himself before he pays his employees. I know you grew up in Michigan.
Right.
Yeah. Mom and dad, work and family. Like, what did mom and dad do?
Yeah. So, I grew up in Dearborn, Michigan, which is the headquarters of Ford Motor Company. My dad was a car engineer at Ford. Middle-class family, and my mom moved from Newfoundland to Canada, and she met my dad in New Jersey. That's where I was born, and they were in New Jersey. My dad worked for Ford in New Jersey and was transferred to headquarters as a kid when I was a little kid. So, but my mom never graduated from high school, and my dad was college educated, which is something that's really rare because my dad went to Rutgers on the GI Bill in the 40s,
Wow.
which is very rare to hear somebody who graduated from college. His parents were immigrants right from Ellis Island. I still have the paperwork from my grandparents' Ellis Island papers.
Where did they come from?
From the Ukraine.
Ukraine.
Yeah. So what is now the Ukraine?
But back then it was Soviet Union.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
They were trying to escape communism, I would assume, or just a better life here?
just a better life from what I never heard stories of escaping communism, but just a better life. But my grandfather was a laborer, and he wanted my dad to be educated, and so my dad was a really really smart guy, spoke 7 languages, but he was a
Wow.
complete introvert.
How many languages do you speak?
One.
Same.
I wish I spoke more, but it's interesting to me because my brain, I'm like great with math, so that's like another language to me. But I can't learn another language. I don't know why. I've tried, but anyways, that's a side note. But
Mm.
but my mom, who was not educated, not even high school graduation, was a complete extrovert, and so I look at the contrast between my mother and my father. They were well paired together because they were yin and yang. My dad, I don't think would have had many friends if it wasn't for my mother, and my mother was just a social person. And when I think about what traits are important to be a good leader, one of them that's rarely talked about that I think is really important is relatability. Because if you can't relate to somebody and they can't relate to you, it's hard to have a relationship because you have to be understanding of the position that other people are in. And so I've been fortunate that one of my skills is that I have relatability skills that are good.
Yeah, so I totally agree with you. I think one of the most important qualities a leader can possess is relatability, but also empathy.
Yeah, for sure. Empathy. Yeah.
Understanding kind of um, someone's situation, what they've been through, or what they're going through.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's the ability to recognize when you have it good. There's a lot of people who are successful who are unhappy,
Yeah.
and I'm not one of those people. No,
Yeah.
I mean I recognize that I'm fortunate,
Yeah.
and when you recognize you're fortunate, it makes it easier for you to be empathetic and for you to want to help other people and to give back to the world.
So people listening to us right now, like I agree with you, empathy is probably one of the best traits a leader can possess. If you're someone that's like, I want to become more empathetic, like is there like things that they can do to try to have more empathy?
That's a good question. I've never thought about it, but I think my off the cuff answer would be go volunteer somewhere. Because if you want to focus on what you have
Yeah.
as opposed to what you don't have, go see somebody who has almost nothing. Because if you spend the time volunteering with homelessness or families that have close to nothing, then you recognize what you do have, and it does make you more empathetic, for sure.
Yeah. I would totally agree with you. I would also say, thinking kind of through it, how you can create more empathy. For me, I've found I've become more empathetic because of all the travel I've done.
Why is that?
So like going to Cambodia
Mm,
and seeing what it's like to live in the slums of Cambodia. And like that's not a reality that I had here living in California or the USA. And so going to places like that and being able to look around and go, wow, I'm so blessed. Like the situation I grew up in is so much different than the situation that a lot of people have around the world.
yeah.
Or going to China or going to, I mean, Bali and seeing Hinduism and how they're all about like what's Hindu into? They're all about like what you give is what you get.
Yeah.
Uh, Karma. Thank you, thank you, Mason. Karma. So Hinduism's all about like karma, right? Like you go meet someone who's working at a gas station or at a local mart, and they're just the sweetest, nicest people in the world, and you're like, wow, like this person just like you're kind of touched by it. It's like you're not used to someone being that sweet and nice, and being Hindu, like you're all about karma, and so what you give to someone is they believe is what you're going to get back. And
I
having
totally agree with that.
yeah, and having those experiences where you're seeing the way people live in different places around the world, they're seeing kind of their reality. I think that opens up your perspective, and when your perspective gets opened up, you're able to have more empathy.
So, as you know, I spend a lot of my time in the foster youth arena.
Yeah.
That's where I spend my volunteer time. And when you see these kids that are in Southern California, just in LA and Orange County, there's 28,000 homeless teens.
Wow.
It's
Wait.
it's
28,000?
homeless teens,
Wow.
and and so it breaks your heart to see what's
Yeah.
going on. And then even the ones that are in the foster system, the average here's a statistic I bet you don't know. The average foster youth goes to 13 high schools.
The average foster youth goes to 13 high schools. So over 4 years, 13 different high schools. I
That's
mean,
right.
they're basically every few months they're changing high schools.
Because they get placed from one foster family to another.
Oh my gosh. So how do
And
you
so
have any type of routine? How do you have any type of
roots, or
roots?
I mean, that's why the statistics of homelessness, crime. I mean, to make it to college when you've been a foster youth is practically a miracle. And so, um, when I hear people talk about it, I got my kid into this school and that school, and my kids went to great schools, but that's because as parents, we were there supporting and helping and teaching and mentoring and hand holding and holding them accountable.
Mm,
When you don't have that and you have a chaotic life like that, just surviving is the goal.
yeah.
So if you want to talk about empathy,
Yeah.
that there's some empathy for you.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, that's like that's kind of hitting me. That's just the heaviness of 28,000 homeless teens.
Yeah.
And what's the organization you're a part of?
Orangewood.
Orangewood is a place where, I mean, tell the audience about Orangewood and how
Orangewood
amazing it is.
is a something that was founded, I don't know, probably almost 50 years ago now by General William Lyon, who recently passed away. He was a Air Force general and then came back and became a very prominent home builder in Southern California and couldn't stand seeing these kids with no place to go. So he built a home for these kids and then donated the home to Orange County. But from there, the foundation went on to just take care of foster and disadvantaged youth, and that's what their focuses are. And it's human trafficking and all the bad things that can happen to these kids in those situations. So it's basically um, a foundation that is focused on all the different aspects that kids in those environments, from the time they're babies to the time they're emancipated youth, even beyond that, where they help these kids get educated, get a place to live, help them get jobs, and help them become functioning adults.
How many kids go to the school?
Well, there's a one of the big things that I was involved with for 4 years was um, raising the money for the Samueli Foundation, which is in Santa Ana, which is a middle school and high school for disadvantaged youths. You don't. If you're a foster youth, you automatically. It's a charter school. You automatically get accepted because there's a long waiting list. But if the rest of the kids are all, you have to come from a disadvantaged family, and it's a huge success story where, 99% of the kids graduate, like 90% of them go off to at least community college or some form of college, and a lot of them get college scholarships. And so I was involved in doing the capital campaign to fundraise for the first high school, which we raised, I think, $40 million. And then since that time, they've done a second raise for the middle school and the gymnasium. And so now, it's a fully functioning, super impressive facility, and the people that run it are just doing an amazing job of taking care of these kids and giving them that stability. They have dorms on campus for the foster youth to actually live there, so they don't have to keep transferring from one high school to another.
It's amazing. I want to go back to your story, but before we back to your story coming from your parents in high school and all that, why do you think the organization has been able to be so successful? Why do you think that like you said, like almost all these kids are graduating from high school. They're going on to go to junior college or universities. Like, what is the reasoning behind why Orangewood has been able to be as successful as it has been? And what can we take from that and apply towards other organizations or schools here in Los Angeles?
Well, for one, it's people that in that whole school system there at Samuel L. Foundation. They all care about these kids. The principal has had to go to homes where kids were being abused himself and take the kids out of the home and put them in his own home. So all the teachers. It's not just a school where you're there to learn. It's a mission to give back to the community, and so but it's stability and accountability as well. It's an environment that's safe for the kids to go to. It's a respite, but they have teachers that care about them, and all the different facilities are there. There's counseling for kids, and they work with the social programs if necessary to make sure the kids have proper housing and clothes and food and so forth.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so cool to hear of a story, a success story
It's a huge success story.
schooling department, because I would say the education system here in California, and I can only speak to California, the public school system I would not say is a success story.
No.
So when you come across an organization that's doing it right, it's how do we take those best practices that Orangewood has done and the success they've had, and how do we replicate that at some of the other schools?
Well, there's at the risk of being political, we have to
We
have
love
more,
it.
we have to have more, the charter school system is proven successful.
Yeah.
And, there's a lot of forces working against the charter school system. And because they're not held, charter schools are all public schools. They're not private schools, but they're not held to the same rules and laws that the average high school or middle school goes through. And if you're a teacher at a charter school, you're there because you want to be there. There's no teachers union to stand up for you. You're there, and you're there for the kids. And I, for one, am a huge fan of the charter school system, but I know that's a political hot potato.
Well, it might be, but I'm not at a point now where I have kids. Hopefully I will have kids soon, but I will tell you, Joe, a lot of my friends that do have kids, and if I did have kids, there's a lot of hesitation to the schooling system here in California. And I think that we need to change things. I don't necessarily know what that looks like, but I just know I'm not in a place where I need to make a decision on the schooling, because I obviously don't have kids. But if I did, I would strongly consider sending my kids out of state or trying to find other options.
Well, that's because you're in the financial position where you can afford to do that. Well, that's the truth.
Well, maybe.
But the kids that we got to worry about are the kids that are in the poor neighborhoods.
Yeah.
And there's no competition in schools. So, I think there's 8 states now have a voucher system for public schools. So there's no competition in the school system. And so, in all business, there's competition. Competition, we can hate our competitors because they win a project from you, but competition makes you sharpen your saw.
100%. I could not agree with you more.
And so without competition, you can't get better.
Yeah, everything. Yeah, I totally agree. I mean, that's like one of the best aspects of, in my opinion, capitalism, is this ability of you reap what you sow, and that, like, having a competitive environment, a competitive market it's like that old saying that, like, all ships rise as the tide goes up.
Right.
And so having an environment where it's competitive with other schools, I just think that makes all the schools better.
So, I think that would go a long way in making our schools better, but that's above my pay grade.
Okay, so let's go back to the early days. So Dad speaks 7 languages. He's an introvert. Mom is very extroverted. you basically, one of your takeaways from that is your relatability, because you
Right.
had a mom who was extremely extroverted, you had a dad who was an introvert, and
Yeah.
so as a leader, you've seen that as a it's not something people talk about a lot, but that is such a benefit to leaders who can relate to many different types of people. And you talked about ways people can have more empathy.
Hmm.
So let's go to early on. Like maybe you said you were born in New Jersey,
Yeah, I was 3 years old when we moved to Michigan,
and
so I
then
was a little kid.
yeah, and I love Michigan. I think it's such a beautiful place.
Yeah, it
You
is.
took me to Michigan.
Yeah.
Yeah, one of
Went
my
to the big
first
house.
took me to the big house, which is one of the coolest sporting experiences I've ever been to. It's what an incredible fan base, what an incredible stadium, what an incredible program. Super
Yeah.
cool. But before Michigan, what was Joe like as a kid?
Well, I was always a friendly person. It's funny. I was thinking of a story the other day that I don't know what made me think of it. We used to have a next door neighbor. We didn't have fences. We had hedges between our homes. And my next door neighbor was an older guy who kept this very elaborate garden. And I used to go over and talk to him all the time when I was a little kid. I mean, I was like 6. He'd be gardening, and I'd walk over there and talk to him all the time because I don't know why I'm talking. I was a 6-year-old talking to an 80-year-old, and he would always bring me back home, to my mom, and he would tell my mom, "Joe's going to be the mayor of this town someday." So, I think that it starts with liking people and being interested in things that are not what you do. I don't garden, but I had a lot of interest in gardening when I was 6 years old, apparently, but I like talking to my older neighbor.
Mm.
So I
So you're naturally curious as a child.
naturally curious and naturally would talk to people that I didn't know. And I think that's helped me as a skill through life.
Did your mom did your mom help that? As in, would she put you in social situations and want you to talk to people?
I don't think not on purpose.
No.
No, just because it was like every other kid. I was involved in lots of things, and I just got fortunate that I was in situations where I got to talk to lots of different types of people. And my dad, although he was an introvert, he recognized the importance of putting me in situations where I was uncomfortable, and so he would take me to business dinners with him when I was like 10 years old, and
Wow.
which was fascinating. When I think back about it now, it was fascinating because I would mostly sit and listen. But whoever my dad was having dinner with, they would make an effort to talk to me, and so I'd have to converse to an adult when I was a young child. So I would highly recommend that going. And I've done that with my own children. Started bringing them to business dinners when they were younger. And that was
I
when
don't
my
think I've
dad taught
ever
me to use the right fork and knife at a business dinner and all that kind of stuff.
I don't Joe, I don't think I've ever heard of that before. Because you never think you're going to a business dinner taking kids with you.
Well, I've done it myself now because I modeled my father after that, and it was I would tell, like, if I was going to dinner with a client, I'd say, "I'm bringing my daughter. She's 12. She's never been on a business dinner, and I hope you don't mind." Nobody says no to that.
Yeah.
Everybody's like, "Yeah, that's great. Bring her
Yeah,
along."
I think it's a great idea.
And so they engage, and they're forced into situations where they have to do it. I was thinking of a time when my daughter Isabel was I think she was in junior high, and I brought her to an Orangewood event where it was just me and her and like a room full of 40 adults that are all, volunteers for Orangewood. And this was some sort of fundraiser. I don't remember what. And I said, go introduce yourself. And she did. And I didn't talk to her for an hour. She was walking around shaking hands with people. So it's training to be relatable.
Yeah. That is really cool. That's cool that your dad did that to you did that with you at such a young age, and then you were able to, like you said, model raising your kids in the same way,
Yeah.
putting them in those situations where they're uncomfortable.
Yeah. And A kid is going to, if you ask a kid, do they want to do it, they're going to say no.
Yeah.
But you don't give them the option.
Yeah, like Isabel, you're coming with me on this.
Yeah, and get dressed nice, fix your hair.
Yeah.
You're going to be with a group of adults.
Okay, so little Joe is curious. He's talking to the neighbors. He's going on business dinners with his dad. What was Joe like in high school or college?
I had long hair,
Nice.
dyed blonde.
You dyed it blonde?
Well, I used to put sun in it. Do you know what that
Nice.
is? It's a spray you put in your hair, and when the
Yeah.
sun would hit it, it would
You wouldn't
bleach
put
your hair.
lemon? I've heard people putting like lemon in their hair.
I don't know what was in that stuff. I'm just glad I still have a full head of hair, because who knows what I was putting in my hair. And so yeah, no, I had long hair in high school, and no, had a lot of friends. I was very fortunate.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And went to Michigan,
yeah,
studied math.
math and chemistry.
Crazy. You're in, which I sometimes think about, that you are CEO of Tangram, run Tangram. It's an interior design. It's a office environment company.
Right.
Um, you wouldn't think someone who studied math and chemistry would be going into this industry, but it served you very well.
Well, I kind of, like most people, fell into the business in the circumstances that it happened, and so I feel very fortunate. First of all, my math skills. When you run a business, if you don't understand accounting, you can't be successful at a business, because I don't care what business you're in, whether you're a doctor, an architect, or a software engineer, it's still business, and business always goes by accounting. And so if you're not making money and don't understand how to manage your money, you're not going to be in business very long.
So to all early business leaders, you recommend taking an accounting course.
Yeah, I mean, if I've often, I've become friends with college presidents and so forth, and when I get a chance to be on my soapbox, I tell them, I think everybody should be forced to take an accounting class. I don't care.
Every
When you, I have, I have friends who are extremely smart, went to Stanford, doctors, right? But they don't understand accounting. But they're still, if your medical office is running a business, and so I don't care what business you're in, it's still a business, and you should understand accounting. And the reason I say all that is that I never took an accounting class. And so I'm good at accounting now, but I'm a combination of self-taught and taught from my CFO, who's been with me for 30 years. And he literally it was like a tutorial on accounting. But it's really important that you understand it. But even if you're not running a business, if you understand accounting, you'll run your own personal finances better. So I just believe that accounting is kind of like taking a math class or taking English. It's a skill that you should learn.
Yeah, so whether you start your own business, it's just going to help you personally.
It's going to help you personally. Yeah. So I'm a big believer in that. But I think my fact that I understand math, and that's the language that comes easy to me. I was able to learn accounting. And I understand that it's not that easy to learn.
So how did you get into the office furniture world? So studying math, chemistry at Michigan, did you go straight into?
No, I didn't. I was going to go to like medical or dental school, but didn't get in. So I was back at home living in my parents' basement, and I'm like, I got to get out of here. And so right after I graduated, a good friend of mine from school had gotten a job at a big chemical company, but in sales. And I'm like, oh, that sounds like something I could do. Because I didn't want to be a chemist. I'm like, God forbid, if I had to sit with a lab coat and beakers, I would have been miserable.
But you were studying chemistry.
Yeah, but I did it because I was going to go to graduate school.
To be a doctor?
Yeah. But I didn't get in. Ironically, my wife's a doctor now, so I have to understand she's clearly smarter than me. But I ended up getting that sales job right out of college, and I went to work for a big chemical company, and it was a technical sales job, but it's still a sales position. And that company had 140 salespeople nationally, and I very shortly after I got the job, we went on a sales conference, and they were giving out sales awards, and it was a big thing where people were on stage for sales achievement. And I thought to myself, I'm going to be on that stage next year, and I was.
Wow.
And I only stayed there 4 years, but I've only had 4 jobs in my life. But that first job, I stayed there 4 years. But I went from number 140 in 4 years, number one. I resigned from that company when I was the number one salesperson in the company.
Wow. How did you like what made you so successful?
Well, first of all, I like people. So if you're going to be in a sales role, you have to have the ability to like other people and be interested in them, because the stuff I sell is not necessarily better or cheaper than what the next person is selling. People buy from people they know and they trust. And so I figured that out early on. And so I made relationships with people. And so that's how I became successful. And, this was more than 30 years ago now. And 4 years out of college, I was making 4x what my dad was making after working 30 years as an engineer. And I went to, I had a friend who worked for Steelcase, and I used to go to all these parties with her. And I thought to myself, that's a much more fun industry than what I'm doing, because I was literally selling barrels of industrial chemicals to, power plants and wastewater treatment plants and factories. I was going in the back door, and it was always a dirty environment. And then the flip side, I'm like, oh, this is fun. They talk about art and design all the time. So I ended up quitting that chemical sales job and going to work for a furniture dealership in Detroit. And I was making less than half of what my dad was making. And I'll never forget it, because when I went home to tell my dad I quit the chemical sales job, when he knew how much money I was making, I don't want to say the words, but are you
Are you kidding me?
Are you an effing idiot? So I said no, but I said I've come to the conclusion that I have the ability to sell things, but I want to spend my time in a place that I find enjoyable. So the one great thing about what we sell as an organization, people are happy when they're doing it. It's a very serious business with very serious amounts of money changing hands for large corporations. But it's always a happy time when somebody gets a new office and they renovate their office. They're excited. It's like if you're going to renovate your home, just think about how excited you're going to be, what it's going to look like in the end. That's the same anticipation that people, when they're spending to renovate their offices, have.
Yeah.
I mean, you have to buy a washer and dryer, but you don't. If you're going to renovate your kitchen, that's a much happier thing to do.
Yeah. When were you, what? I'm trying to think. Like, when were you in Detroit?
Well, I lived in Michigan up until the time I moved here to California. So I moved here in 2002.
2002. And so I'm just trying to think of when you jumped into work with this dealership. Was this the 80s?
Oh, my first job?
Yeah.
Yes, it was in the 80s. I'm dating myself here.
What was Detroit like back then?
Well, inner city Detroit, I'm happy to say it's now coming back. And
Yeah,
it's
it is.
been coming back, and I'm really happy about that. I was, most of my adult life, Detroit was a place you didn't go to at night. And it was decrepit and bombed out, and unfortunately in a bad place.
Were you ever in your early 20s going into Detroit? Did you feel like it was dangerous then?
Only at night. I would go in because we would call in the auto companies, and they were in Detroit. General Motors was in Detroit, and so no, I didn't have any problem going. But you just have to be careful. Any big city has those kind of problems, but it was particularly bad, and I felt sad about it, to be honest with you, because it was such a vibrant city in the 60s, and I'm glad now it's finally coming back. It had to go through its rough patch, and I'm concerned about that for Los Angeles, to be honest with you. So
Yeah. Same. I was just in downtown LA, and I was just talking about this with someone else where I felt as if Los Angeles downtown specifically was having its moment. Pre-COVID, as in everything, it seemed as if a lot of people were going downtown with the arts
Yeah.
district, all those billion-dollar projects. It was super exciting. Going to school at USC, you could see how it was changing. And then unfortunately, COVID hit, and it felt like it just took 10 to 20 steps backwards.
Yeah. Right.
And now I don't even really recognize it going down there. I mean, it's still, gosh, that's, I'm saying that's a bit extreme. You definitely still recognize it, but it seems as if there's a massive issue with homeless there.
Yeah. That's a motion detector. If you just want to go wave your hands over there, there you go. That's why the lights went off.
So yeah, I would agree with you that I'm a bit concerned about Los Angeles.
Yeah. So that's why, people going back to the office matters, because if you're going to support the rest of the restaurants and the dry cleaners and everything else, people need to be back in the office.
Yeah,
So,
or else they just die out.
yeah.
That's how all those people make a living, is through all the offices that occupy those buildings. People need a place to go eat and shop and
Right.
whatnot.
Exactly.
Okay, so Detroit in the 80s is a little dangerous at
Yeah.
night, not bad during the day.
Right.
You're working for a dealership, enjoying it because it's an exciting time when you're redoing your office and upgrading it.
So I worked for a company much like Tangram is today. It was a very multifaceted business with a lot of different divisions. And I started out as an entry level commission sales guy working it, and I worked there for 13 years, and I left as the VP of sales. And I learned so much from that experience in two regards. One is the owner of the business at the time, he considered me his fix-it guy. So if he had a broken division that he couldn't figure out how to fix, he would send me in. And I remember specifically telling him, I don't know anything about that business. And he says, go figure it out. And at the time I thought, this is punishment, right? But it turned out to be one of the greatest things that has ever happened, because I got to go learn another business. I learned how to take a business that was broken and turn around and fix it. And I had no risk because I didn't own it. And so by the time, fast forward to when I stepped into Tangram, I'd already fixed a half a dozen businesses, so I knew what to do. Or at least I had a knowledge base of what works and what doesn't when you're trying to repair a business. And so I felt very fortunate that I was able to have that experience. But I also, the other thing I learned from that experience is that the guy who owned that business was the antithesis of the way I run this one. He was not present in the business. He didn't care about the people that worked there. He was very self-absorbed, and I couldn't live with myself if I ran things that way. So
So a lot of your, would you say a lot of your leadership style came from not wanting to replicate or emulate the
yeah,
leadership that you saw at that first dealership?
you can absolutely learn as much from a bad leader as a good leader, because you can learn what not to do.
Can you give us some examples?
Well, I'll never forget the time we were going through another recession, and
Is this the .com? No, that would have been the 90s. This is the first recession?
first recession for me.
What was going on?
I don't remember. It's too long ago.
That's okay.
But I remember him coming into the office and giving him, because I sat very close to him, and he told the CFO to give himself a raise, and he wanted me to lay off 20 people.
Oh, wow. Yeah, that is the definition of the antithesis of you, especially what we talked about at the beginning of this
I know.
podcast.
And I told him, I said, I won't do it. You'll have to fire me. I will not do that, especially now knowing that what you just did. And he did it anyways.
So he just fired everyone?
Yeah.
Wow.
And so I was heartbroken over that. And so that's why I can't. That's what I say. The opposite of good leadership.
Yeah.
You can learn from that as well.
How, Joe, after that happened, how long did it take for you to get out of that situation?
Well, this was, in the last couple of years. So I I went up and told him I was going to leave in a year because again, I cared about the people that worked there, and I knew if I just walked out the door it would hurt the business. So I told him, I said, I'm going to leave in a year, and I'm going to find my own replacement and train my own replacement, and then I'm going to go do my own thing. So
Um,
that's the agreement we came to.
that is really cool. I feel like that for someone to do that is pretty unique. I mean, it just speaks to your character. If you know that you're going to leave a job and you know that you have other aspirations or things that you want to do you think going about it that way is the best possible way an employee can if they know they need to leave, do you think letting the employer know well in advance is the best way to go about that?
Well, I also think a lot of that comes into the responsibility of the employer. Did they create an environment where that conversation is acceptable, right? Because if it is, that you know, you want to be in a place where it's like it's okay to have that conversation. Because I knew I couldn't do any more at the place that I was at. I could have stayed and done the same thing forever, but I couldn't take his behavior. So I just decided I'm going to do my own thing. And I went off and started my own business from scratch. So that was another. Remember, I told you I went from a good paying job to entry level. And so then I went, now I'm, fast forward 13 years, now I'm married and I have two kids that are under 5. And I quit my job that I was, again, making a good living. And my wife was a resident at the time. And we had $150,000 worth of medical school debt that we were paying off.
So you were at that dealership for 13 years?
13 years. Then I went and started my own dealership.
How old were you when you started your own dealership?
I was 30.
30.
Yeah. So I know you like to talk about entrepreneurship. I as a kid never thought of myself as somebody who would own or start my own business. It was foreign to me. I was just a striver. But over time, I didn't decide to have my own business till I was in my 30s. Over time, I realized I can do that. It's a matter of, are you willing to take the risk? Because it's hard to go from a well-paying job and then you have a mortgage and kids to decide I'm going to go start my own business. It can be scary.
Yeah.
So but without the risk, you can't have the reward.
What would you say to someone early on in their career who has a job that's paying them well, kind of a similar situation, and they're considering making the leap?
Well, first of all, it has to be what you want to do and understand it's going to be challenging and difficult. And there's going to be a lot of sleepless nights worrying about money mostly. And it would start with, if you think you're going to do it, make sure your own personal balance sheet is in order. Meaning, do you have savings put aside? Because you're going to go without an income for quite some time. And that's been what I've been through in my career multiple times. Every single time I moved forward, I had to go backwards first. And so when you go backwards, if you're used to making X amount of dollars and you're going to live on zero. I lived on zero for the first 2 years of starting my first business, and we lived on our savings and my wife's meager income as a resident. So, but we were financially stable. We could be able to afford to do that. So, but in the same vein, you've always got to be worrying about payroll and hiring people and insurance and lawyers and all the things that come into running a business that are peripheral to what your main business is. Whatever your business is, you still have to have lawyers and accountants and all the things that you don't think about when you're in a business. I remember when I first started that business, I started in a small room half this size by myself and a desk telephone. And this is a long time ago now. And I remember the customer said, fax me your information. And I'm like, okay. And then I look around and I'm like, I don't have a fax machine. So I had to go find one to send the client a fax. And so it's all those little things that are realities that you have to be prepared for,
Yeah.
and have a lot of self-belief. But you just need to be financially prepared for it and emotionally prepared, because eventually you're going to have people and payroll, and you're going to have customers who owe you money and they haven't paid you, and you're going to be like, okay, how am I going to make payroll tomorrow? Right? So those are all the kind of things you got to worry about.
So being kind of financially stable personally and
For,
being willing to kind of take the risk and take the leap.
yeah. So, I mean, if you're a commission salesperson and you get a big check, but you want to start your own business, what do you do with the money? Do you keep it invested, or do you go buy a new car?
Yeah.
Buying the new car is the wrong decision.
100%.
Yeah.
Keeping your expenses as low as possible.
Yeah.
But kudos to you. I mean, starting a family, having a wife who's in residency, being able to save 2 years worth of having 2 years worth of savings where you can go off and do this.
Yeah.
It worked out.
It worked out.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So started your own dealership in Michigan, or excuse me, in Detroit.
Well, it was in the suburbs.
Are you with a main manufacturer?
Yeah, I was with Hayworth at the
Hayworth.
time.
So and what was the dealership you were with prior? Were they a Hayworth dealership as well?
No, that was a Steelcase dealer.
Got it.
Yeah.
So to the audience, the furniture industry has 4 major players, or 3 now.
Well, there's Steelcase.
Yeah, which Tangram is a
Steelcase dealer.
Steelcase dealership. So that means that the most of the product that you sell here is Steelcase.
Well, about 40%
Got it.
of our top line revenue is with. So they're our number one vendor and an important vendor to us.
And Steelcase is located in Michigan.
Yes, but they're a worldwide organization.
Headquarters is Grand Rapids for them.
Right.
Yeah. Okay, so Steelcase is one of the main manufacturers. Then you have Hayworth,
And then
Knoll, and Herman Miller.
Knoll and Herman Miller have merged, so it's called Miller Knoll now.
Oh, it's called Miller
So
Knoll.
there's 3 major manufacturers.
Those are the three. And so Tangram represents Steelcase, like I said. Your first dealership was Steelcase. This new dealership is Hayworth.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was recruited by Hayworth to start a dealership from scratch, so I did. And so that was a journey where I literally started by myself in a small office that I was renting from a moving and storage company. And then I grew the business from there, and I had it for 6 years. And now my wife is a professor at the University of Michigan Medical School. And so we had an established business, and my wife had a good job. So we had never intended to move from Michigan, and my business was doing well, and her career was going well. But I got approached by Steelcase and the former CEO of Steelcase about they had an opportunity for us on the West Coast. And I said, well, I'm really not interested because I have a good thing going here. And then simultaneously, and it must have been karma, or as luck would have it,
Yeah.
I got approached by a former professional basketball player to buy my Hayworth dealership.
Wow.
It was all kind of happened simultaneously, and I thought to myself, this must be like a sign.
Yeah. Sign from God.
Yeah, so that I ended up, the short story is I ended up selling this took a year and a half to do, but I sold my Hayworth dealership to him, and then was negotiating with Steelcase to move to California to take over Tangram. And Tangram's, is a 60-year-old business, and so I've been here for 21 years, but the previous 40 years it went through lots of growth and spurts and bumps and as well.
With acquiring Tangram here, did you just go through normal financing, like an SBA loan?
No, it was unbankable.
It was unbankable.
Right, it was that much in debt. So 2 things. I mean, again, I took a massive pay cut to come here and do this.
So you sold the Hayworth dealership. What was the Hayworth dealership called in?
University Business Interiors.
University Business Interiors. Sold that to a professional basketball player.
Yeah.
Is dealerships, are there decent, like, is it, I would assume, are they decent multiples? Like, is that how they...
I mean, if you sell them?
Yeah.
Yeah, they get a multiple of EBITDA.
Got it.
Yeah. And so I I lost my train of thought.
Well, I was asking you, how did you finance this Tangram
Oh, right,
purchase?
right.
Which I think is interesting in that I think there's a huge opportunity for the audience, and just in general, where a lot of baby boomers are starting to retire and they have these smaller businesses that they're their babies. They've been in business for 20, 30, 40,
Yeah.
50 years. Maybe they have kids that don't want the business or they don't know what to do with it. They don't have any heirs. And so I think there's a huge opportunity for people that are kind of willing to get out of the tech industry or a lot of these glamorous jobs and go into businesses that are a little bit more blue collar and buy them
Right.
from the boomers that are looking to kind of have some type of nest egg to retire. So I'm finding myself incredibly curious on how people are financing business purchases to learn, because I think there's huge opportunity now and in the near future to do these types of things.
Yeah. So, well, there's a couple on your last point. This isn't a sexy business like the software business.
I
But
think this is actually it's a pretty sexy
but
business.
it is.
I mean, we're in this like glamorous office space.
Yeah, we have the coolest offices for sure. All of our offices are very cool. But I mean, in the end of the day, we're still fulfilling an office space. But we get to spend our time around, creative people all day, every day, and so that makes it a lot of fun.
The architect, interior design community are some of the best people in the world.
Yes, for sure. And
Yeah.
so
Incredibly kind, generous, nice. I mean, it's
creative.
just creative.
Yeah.
Yeah, if whenever I go to the events or I'm around these types of people, it's nice to be around people. And I know one of your favorite books is Atlas Shrugged, which we
Right.
could totally talk about. But I do feel like a lot of the creative community is kind of pushing things forward, like they're progressing kind of things forward. Not so much, I guess, a little bit on the business sense, but more of like they're what's the word? What's the terminology I'm looking for? Like they're pushing boundaries
Yeah.
from a creative sense.
Design impacts almost everything in our life. We just don't think about it.
Yeah, I wish we thought about it more.
Yeah. I mean, if you think about, I'm staring at this microphone. Somebody spent weeks or months designing this microphone, an industrial designer.
Yeah.
Because it has to not only work technically, but it has to look good. And so if you think about what it takes to design a car, the level of detail it requires to make a car work, safe, and look good, that takes tens of thousands of hours to design something like that. And those are tangible design items that we touch and feel every day that people don't appreciate, in my opinion. But everything when you look at a coffee pot or a drill, those are all designed by somebody, and design is a big industry that doesn't get talked about enough, in my opinion.
I started to really take note of design after a trip I did to Japan.
Yeah.
Have you spent much time in Japan?
I've never been to Japan.
Oh my gosh! I mean, talk about attention to detail.
Yeah.
It's the we're sitting on these chairs and the exterior of them looks amazing, but they'll take as much time on the interior as they will on the exterior to make sure that every aspect of it, even like parts of it that the eye doesn't see, looks as beautiful as what the eye does see.
Yeah. That was Steve Jobs' things.
That was Steve Jobs' things. And I
Yeah.
want to say he was obsessed with Japan too, where there was some relation to Japanese culture, I think, in his life. But that was one of my favorite countries and places I've been to is Japan because of what you said. There's such an emphasis on design and how that impacts the way you feel and the way you think. And I think design is so big. It's one of the reasons I also love Europe too, is they designed these. I mean, the architecture there is unbelievable. And it wasn't like, how do we build this for as cheap as possible and sell it for as much as possible?
Yeah.
That's a lot of the industry. That's a lot of America, unfortunately, is like,
Oh, yeah.
let's try to build it. Let's try to make as much money as we can out of this asset. Whereas I feel like a lot of the buildings in Europe, they weren't really thinking about how much money they were going to make for it. They were like, let's build things that are just beautiful, that are an enjoyment for people.
Well, just think of what it's going to take to rebuild the Notre Dame Cathedral. It's in Paris. It's unbelievable.
Yeah.
But anyways, getting back to
Yeah, we just
financing.
went on a tangent there.
Yeah, we went way off base.
But we are in agreement. Design matters.
Design matters. So, the deal I made with Steelcase because the business was taken over by Steelcase, which they don't own their distribution, but they had to buy it because the previous owners couldn't pay their trade receivables to them. So they basically came in and took over the business for 18 months until they found a new owner, which ended up being myself. And but it was unbankable. And so the deal I made with them is I basically had to pledge my entire net worth, and then they wrote me a note back for the balance of the money, and I had to pay them off over. It took me 7 years to pay off the dealership. So I had a note from them with interest, and it took me 7 years to pay it off.
Wow.
And then they were the co-signer on my bank loan, so I could get a bank loan for my line of credit.
And then once you paid it off over 7 years, they had no ownership anymore in this
That's
business.
correct. Right.
And it's fully owned by you?
It is. I had a business partner for many years, but he recently retired. So yes, it's 100%. Well, it's actually 54% owned by my wife and 46% owned by me. We're a woman-owned business. My wife's the chairman of the company.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So the family owns 100% of it.
That's really cool. And so came to California knowing one person, having teaming up with Steelcase on this business, focusing, like you said early on, about the internal culture, and then going on your apology tour.
Right.
At what point, Joe, did you start to kind of take a step back and go, wow, this is working? Like we're, you know, kind of that moment in business where you're like, I don't know if you ever feel like you've made it, but more so like, wow, we've done a lot. We've accomplished a lot.
I've yet to feel that feeling.
I wonder if that's just like a trait most high performers have, of like,
I think so.
it's not that people aren't content. It's more of like this eagerness, or this ambition to constantly be kind of pushing what they thought might have been possible.
Well, I've always run the company to grow it, and we've grown the company every single year of the 21 years, except for 2008 recession. We went backwards. I'm really proud of that though, because our sales, because of the recession, fell 30% in 1 year. We didn't lay people off, and we still made a profit.
Wow.
So
How?
it was a miracle.
Yeah, how?
Well, we did have to. A lot of people voluntarily would go to 4 days a week. We'd furlough, and I would publicly tell people this is what we need to do if we want to save each other's jobs. And so everybody remembered that, and it created a lot of loyalty as a result of that. Because it was not like an easy decision. So, but everybody participated in keeping the company whole. And I didn't want to lay people off, not only for compassionate reasons. When you come out of a recession, there's usually a high growth time, and you don't want to be looking to hire people and teaching them the process at the same time.
So you knew it was coming back, and
the economy always comes back.
Yeah.
If there's one thing I can tell people to pay attention to, it's the news on the economy, because everything else is superfluous to the economy.
Speaking of that, you read the Wall Street Journal every morning.
Yeah.
That's so. If there is a recommendation of either books to read or organizations to closely follow, I know one of your favorite books is Atlas Shrugged.
Right.
Because you've recommended it to me, which is an incredible book. I've read it a few times. It's amazing. Long book.
1,200 pages.
Long book. And then Wall Street Journal. You read religiously every morning.
Every day.
Is there anything else you would recommend?
Well, I constantly am trying to learn. I mean, so if having a learning mindset.
Yeah.
I mean, I like sports as much as the next person, but I don't know every statistic of every player out there. I don't spend my time doing that. I might watch. I love college football, and I'll watch that, and I like watching golf on TV. But I won't spend hours and hours and hours doing it, and I don't study the statistics.
Yeah. I
try to vary my learning. So I'm almost always reading a book or listening to an audiobook at all times. So I have varied tastes on all kinds of things, and like right now I'm reading Outlive.
Oh, that's
Dr. Peter.
Yeah, Tia. I hear good things about that book.
It's awesome.
Yeah.
It's a little technical.
Yeah.
I have to have my wife explain it to me sometimes, but
Are you a Huberman fan?
I listen to his podcast from time
Yeah.
to time. Yeah.
Yeah. Um, how?
But the constant learning is the point, and vary your tastes, and if you want to de-stress, um, start reading or listening to something that's completely out of your uh, expertise, right? So
Do you read or listen to fantasy at all? Like any?
no,
So you're mostly just reading business books.
no, I read, I listen to novels and things at times too, but not I wouldn't call them fantasy books.
Yeah. What is a day in a life? I know you're an early bird.
I mean, yeah,
Are you up every morning at 4:30?
yes.
Wow.
I mean, on weekends I don't set an alarm, but I usually wake up at 5:30. So, but I get up at 4:30 on a typical business day. I get up at 4:30. I have the coffee pot set, so I go right to the coffee pot.
Yeah.
I drink a cup of coffee and read the Wall Street Journal for an hour, and
Are
then
you getting hard copy to your house?
no,
You use your
my
tablet or
iPad.
whatever?
Yeah,
Okay, so 4:30, you drink coffee, read the Wall Street Journal. It's 5:30.
usually work out. I have a trainer that comes 3 days a week,
Mm-hmm.
and then the other days I ride my Peloton usually, and then on the weekends. And so on the rest of the day, I go to one of our offices every day.
And you have offices here in Santa Fe. You have downtown LA, which is a studio. You have Orange County,
We have Newport Beach,
Newport
right?
Beach.
We have
and
two
then,
in the Central Valley.
Yeah. And then you
then-
just opened up a Dallas office.
And we opened up a Dallas office, and I go there probably 3 times a month. So the travel's a little tough.
Yeah.
So, but I've enjoyed it a lot. Dallas is a very vibrant city and growing in leaps and bounds. It's incredible. So anyways, I will go to an office, have internal meetings. Usually, if I'm in the office, I have lunch brought in. I don't go out, and then I'm always in front of clients, and I entertain 2 or 3 nights a week.
Entertain, are you having people to your house, or are you just going out to dinner?
Sometimes in my house, sometimes out to dinner. We entertain at home. You've been to my house?
No.
Oh, I thought you had. In any event, and then usually home by 10 o'clock.
10 o'clock.
Yeah, or in bed by 10 o'clock for sure.
In bed by 10? I mean, if you're getting up at 4:30,
Yeah,
you got to go to bed early.
yeah. So, and then on the weekends, I either cycle or play golf, and do things with dinners with friends. And I've made a lot of friends through the business community. Clients have become close friends, and there's just not enough hours in the day to have a complete personal social life and a complete business life. So I've kind of married the two where
Yeah.
a lot of clients and business associates have become friends, and we socialize and don't talk about business stuff, but we're close friends now too, so it's nice.
Yeah, that's something I talked to Mitchell about, which Mitchell works here at Tangram, one of your partners here.
Right.
And this concept of when a client becomes a friend,
Right,
they're a client for life,
for sure.
which that's something I totally subscribe to.
Yeah. Well, the reality is that clients have the same life that we have. They're busy. And I mean, you're still young and you're going to have kids and you're going to make friends. Some of our best personal friends are people we met because we carpooled our kids together to grade school.
Yeah.
So you have to go through that part of your life, but that's one of the ways you'll make friends. But when you get to be 40 and 50 and 60, you're not carpooling your kids anymore, and neither are they. And so you're going to make friends that way through your business,
Yeah.
which is good. They don't have to be separate.
Yeah, there's not enough time in the day to have separate lives, like you said.
No, there's not enough time in a day.
And it's nice if you can intertwine work and business.
For sure.
I mean, just take the event I went to with you, which is it's a work event when we went to the big house,
Right.
but it was also like it was a fun event too. Like
Yeah.
it's nice when you can kind of combine the two. It's the best of both
When
worlds.
you get a bunch of clients that don't know each other, and then you're tailgating in Ann Arbor before a football game.
Yeah,
I mean, how much fun is that,
It
right?
I don't think it gets more fun.
Yeah,
It's amazing.
especially when we win.
Yeah, that was incredible. So you and I played golf. I want to say I don't know months ago,
Yeah.
and you were chatting about how you inspire your employees here, and it was something along the lines, and I you would know it better than I would, but it kind of struck me as when you hear of a lot of companies, they're always trying to like inspire their employees through like a mission statement of like everyone's got a different mission
Mm.
statement, but yours struck me when we were playing golf that it was all about like it was very real to me, as in it was like we want to do better than the next company so we can put food on our table and
Well, all I can tell you is that we have a profit sharing plan in the organization, and so there's a formula for how much money we put to the profit sharing. So the more money the company makes, so if you do something that improves our profitability, a little bit of that goes into your own pocket because that's how we have a formula that's public, and we share the financials with the organization. And when you hit this profitability goal, the profit sharing goes up for the organization. So it makes me feel good when we can write sizable checks to this staff at the end of the year.
yeah. And what you're doing is everyone's aligned,
Everybody's rowing the boat in the same direction.
rowing the boat in the same direction for sure. And it's beneficial whenever it's beneficial to the company. It's beneficial to you. Your values and goals are aligned.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah. Um, I would love to talk about Atlas Shrugged with you.
Okay.
What about that book has struck you as in? Would you say it's your favorite book?
Oh, yeah, it's my favorite book, and I would say it changed my life. I read it right after I got out of college, and then I read it again about 10 years ago. And I should read it again because there's so many great. I mean, the lessons of that book are, you can't count on the government. You have to count on yourself, and profit is important, and the collective doesn't always have the individual in mind. So, and capitalism works. So, when I read that book for the first time, it was like a revelation to me. It takes discipline to read it because Ayn Rand's writing style is very long,
Yeah, she goes deep.
and she describes things in if that book were written today, it'd be 400 pages because an editor would never let it be published in its current form. I mean, the money speech is 100 pages long.
Yeah.
So in and of itself. So I just learned to count on myself. I'm trying to remember some of the other, but I remember thinking to myself, I'm never going to rely on the government to do something for me. I'm going to do it for myself.
Yeah, one of the things that stuck out to me about that book was this idea of progress. Men or women that are trying to push society forward and how important that is,
Right.
and they're motivated by self interest.
Yeah. So self-interest is not necessarily evil.
But yeah, exactly. It's not necessarily evil, but depending on what you subscribe to, you could be told it's evil. But it's,
Right.
I mean, let's just take your example. Okay, right, Joe. Like you are self-interest in that you want to create a very profitable business here that's successful, right? And that you have income coming in and you're able to pay yourself and pay your employees because the business has been doing so well for so long. You were able during a tough time to not pay yourself and to pay your employees.
Well, it's not just that. I mean, if you look at, and this may have been what I told you on the golf course, is that we went from when I first got here to having 80 employees and losing money to now having 410 employees and being profitable. And then if you look at the leadership of this organization, they're almost all of them were people that started at the entry level and rose up through the organization. So when you look at it along those lines, you're creating opportunity and livelihood and growth patterns for individuals, and that's the goal, right? And I'm just providing a vehicle for them to do it in, and not put and trying to help take down the barriers for those people so they can be successful. We always try to promote from within first, and so that's how people can. I've had people tell me, "Thank you because I've been able to buy a house. Thank you because I've been able to buy a new car." I mean, that's the rewarding part for me, right? And I'm really proud of that.
That's exactly what you said on the golf course. That was it right there. I'm so glad. I'm so glad we got there, because that was what you told me that struck me, was what inspired you was the ability to change people's lives financially and to
Yeah.
focus on the team. The team is Tangram.
Yeah. And if the company's doing well, that means the individuals are doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I love that book, and I love that mindset of like, hey, let's take care of the team.
Yeah, for sure.
Do you know what the 1% of earners are in the United States?
Mean what their income is?
Yeah,
I don't know.
guess.
300,000?
I actually thought it was 300,000. It's 400,000. It's
Okay.
actually been up because of inflation. It's
Right.
been between like 390 to 410 over the last like few years. So that's overall 1% of the country. Okay, which makes sense. Like if you're taking people from Oklahoma and California, if you average it out, it's 400, give or take. Now, if you take the 1% of each individual state, it gets even more interesting and kind of crazy. What do you think the 1% of California is?
Oh man. I don't know, 800,000.
800,000. To be in the 1% of California, you have to earn $800,000.
Okay.
It's a lot of money.
Yeah, it's a lot of money.
I mean, $400,000 is a lot of money, and to what you were saying, earlier, you can make people are making six figures, which because of inflation, six figures isn't as much as it used to be, but still a good living.
Right.
But the issue is they're not focusing on their balance sheet, and they're getting the new car, the house, the expenses going out, and all of a sudden you have all these obligations and you're kind of living paycheck to paycheck, and you haven't been kind of saving for the rainy day.
That's right.
So it's if you're blessed and you're in a situation where you are starting to make more and more money, don't buy into keeping up with the Joneses. Don't add to the balance sheet. You should be putting that money away, stocking it away, investing.
Whatever you make, you should live on less.
100%. 100%. Are you familiar with the rule of 72?
No.
Okay. So the rule of 72 has become, it's something that I've been trying, everyone I come across, like a lot of the younger people at our company or even my family members or friends, it's something that I've been like bringing up to them because I think it's such a cool rule that people should know. The rule of 72 has to do with compounding interest, right? So you take an interest rate. Okay, so give me like an interest rate, return on an investment that you would want to get.
8%.
8%. Okay, so you take 8%, Joe, and you divide it by 72. 72 divided by 8, 9. That means that your money, if you're getting 8% per year, is going to double in 9 years. So that's the rule of 72. So give me another interest rate. Let's just say you're able to get 12%. Your money's going to double in 6 years. So it's like this concept of when it comes to money, right? Like the way I look at it is hypothetically, let's just say you have an extra $10,000. You take that $10,000 and you go put it into expenses. It's just, you put it into the black hole, which is life, right? You're not going to see it. But if you can put it into an investment and you get 12%, you're going to double that money in 6 years. So that 10,000 is going to be 20,000. 12 years, you're going to have 40,000, right? Like the law of compounding interest, I mean, Einstein talked about it as one of the 8th wonders of the world. But the rule of 72 is something that I've been thinking so much about from an investment standpoint, but then I also think about it from a relationship standpoint, from just an overall like human to human standpoint, as in like all things compound. They're either compounding in the right way or they're compounding in the wrong way. take you for example. You've been someone who's been getting up at 4:30 every morning. How much more productive have you been over a career
Oh, for sure.
versus someone who gets up at 5 or 6,
Or
right? You have an
8.
extra hour or two. Like over 1 week, it's not, it doesn't really move the needle that much, but over a 40 or 50 year career, that
Yeah.
compounding interest.
Yeah, I've never thought of it that way, but you're right.
Yeah. And so the rule of 72 is something that I wish more people knew this rule. Like, as in, like, for every $100 or every $10,000, that $10,000, if you get a decent return on investment, I mean, in a short period of time, you're going to blink in 15, 20 years from now. It's a considerable amount of money if
sure.
you were smart with it.
Yeah.
Joe, this was amazing. Thanks for the
Thanks.
time.
Thank
Anything else you want to end with, or?
Oh, thanks for the chat.
Yeah, this was amazing.
Good catching up.
You're the man.
Thanks.
Yeah.
All right.